I still remember that morning so clearly. The feeling of the bright sunlight beating down on the cracked concrete, the dry smell of dust mixing with the leftover scent of gasoline from the cars that had just passed. Colorado in the middle of summer. I was standing in front of an old public restroom at a remote rest stop, miles away from everything. My worn-out Vans covered in dust, a Metallica t-shirt with sweat stains on the back, and not a single dime in my pocket. No phone, no wallet, no car, and most importantly, no family left to be there for me. My dad, Banks, was the type of man who, if he had a sign on his forehead saying danger, I still wouldn't be sure if society would even take him seriously. He was not only controlling but cruel in a calculated way. He always told me I was useless, a burden to the family. And Alan, my older brother, had long been the perfect version in my dad's eyes. Tall, athletic, good with people, and especially great at kicking me down and laughing at my pain. I'm Salvador, the youngest in the family, and the only one who never reacted to their cruel jokes with anger. I just stayed quiet. I endured. And maybe that's why they thought I would never leave. That morning, they said we should stop for a restroom break. A lonely stop, with only a public restroom, a couple of vending machines, and no one else around. I went in, still half dazed from sleeping in the back seat of the green Suburban. When I came out, less than 10 minutes later, the car was gone. At first, I thought they were just messing with me. The usual family game, some kind of scare tactic to make me afraid, and then laugh when they came back. But then 10 minutes turned into 30, then an hour, then 2. People passing by started giving me pitying looks, a 22-year-old kid who looked lost. A truck driver stopped and asked if I was okay. I said I was waiting for my girlfriend, just making it up because I didn't know what else to say. At that moment, I knew they weren't coming back. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just felt cold, a kind of cold that seeped into my bones, not from the Colorado mountain wind, but from the brutal truth. My family had abandoned me, and they had done it on purpose. I stood up and walked over to a woman with 2 young kids asking to borrow her phone. But instead of calling my dad, mom, or Alan, I called the hotline and got the number for the nearest support center in Grand Junction, about 40 miles away. Then I asked her if she could give me a ride to the town. She hesitated, a stranger in dirty clothes, but then nodded. That was the first time I felt a real sense of kindness in a long time. I made it to the support center and met Dave, a thin man with a warm voice and a knowing look in his eyes, as if he understood exactly what I was going through. He gave me a meal, a hard bed to sleep on, and most importantly, a message. You don't have to go back to where they threw you away like trash. Here, we'll start fresh. And so I started again. I began washing dishes at a small diner called Sonny's, where the owner, Geraldine, an older woman with silver hair dyed purple, didn't ask too many questions. She just pointed to the kitchen and said, "Don't break any plates. Work well, and you keep the job." That's it. I worked 12 hours a day. I slept in a small room at the support center. I used the first money I earned to buy an old phone from Walmart and a prepaid SIM card. A week later, the phone rang. It was my mom. Her voice was shaking. "Where are you?" "Your dad was just joking. They came back after 20 minutes but couldn't find you. Everyone's really worried." I could hear Banks in the background. "Tell him to stop playing games. He knows how to get home." And Alan's familiar laugh. Typical him. Probably sitting somewhere crying, huh? I stayed silent, then said just one thing. "Dad once asked me if I could live on my own. Today you'll get your answer." I hung up, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't scared of them anymore. I don't remember exactly when I started feeling like I was living. Not just existing, but truly living. Maybe it was the morning I woke up on the makeshift bed in the support center, the early sunlight slipping through a small window, shining on my face, and I realized I was okay. There was no one yelling at me, no one mocking me, no Banks banging on my door at 3 a.m. asking why I hadn't cleaned out the garage, no Alan sneering at me during every meal. It was just me, and the sweet silence of freedom. I had been working at Sonny's for almost a month. Geraldine, the owner, was a tough-looking woman with a heart of gold. Her hair had probably been white once, but was now dyed purple like ripe grapes, and every time I saw her, there was at least one new tattoo on her hands. Geraldine never asked where I came from, never asked why I only had one set of work clothes. She just handed me a pair of rubber gloves and said, "Start with the dishes. If you don't do it well, you're out. If you do well, you'll have a chance to survive." I worked like I was learning how to survive, and that's exactly what it was. I washed hundreds of plates, pans, and glasses every day. My back hurt, my hands were blistered from the dish soap, but every time I went back to my sleeping spot, a tiny room at the support center, I smiled. I had a reason to exist. I was supporting myself. No one controlled me anymore. I was the master of my own life. After 3 weeks, Dave, the manager of the center, helped me get the paperwork to apply for a new ID. That was the first step in restoring my legal identity. I remember the moment I stood in front of the DMV camera, my well-worn Metallica shirt, my messy hair, eyes still swollen from sleepless nights. But I smiled, because it was the first time I got to choose my name for the paperwork without any imposed decisions. Name: Salvador Reyes. No longer the useless Salvador that banks always called me. A month later, I got a second job, working as a prep cook in a small Italian restaurant at the end of the street. A friend of Geraldine's had recommended me. I started making enough to leave the center and rent a small room above a laundromat. The room had a window, a mini kitchen, and a private bathroom. It was so small that if I stretched my arms, I could almost touch both walls. But I called it home. By this point, the messages from my family kept coming. From my mom, from Dad, and some from Alan filled with curses mixed with, "It was just a joke. You overreacted." I never responded, but I kept reading them, as a reminder to myself that I had made the right choice in leaving it all behind. One day, Geraldine placed a freshly baked apple pie on the counter and said, "Kid, today you don't look like a rat crawling through the sewers anymore." I laughed, and that was the first time I'd laughed in almost 2 years. A real laugh, not the fake one I used to force for the sake of others. I started learning how to cook. Geraldine showed me how to chop onions without crying, how to make broth from chicken bones instead of using bouillon cubes, and how to season with self-respect. She said, "If you cook just for the money, your food will be as bland as the life of someone without dreams." I didn't have big dreams, but I started to have goals. Every day I tracked my spending, set savings goals, and learned how to plan. At night, I borrowed an old computer from the center to learn about restaurant management, budgeting, and everything banks had once called stuff for guys who don't know how to use muscle. I knew that if I went back, I'd end up living the same manipulated, controlled life. But I didn't go back. I even changed my phone number, deleted my old email account, and blocked all contact. I disappeared from their world, a shadow leaving no trace. 3 months later, I opened my first bank account. The feeling of signing my name on a savings account with $1,250 was oddly joyful, as if every dollar was a small piece of a new Salvador, slowly rebuilding himself from the dust. I also learned something important. Family isn't about bloodlines. It's about the people who don't abandon you when you need them most. Dave is family, Geraldine is family, and even the young cashier at the grocery store, who always smiled at me whenever I bought ramen noodles, is part of my family. The family I chose. 4 years after I was abandoned at the Colorado rest stop, I stood in front of the foggy mirror in the kitchen of Sonny's East, the first branch I built myself, and I saw myself. Not the faint shadow of the boy who'd been called useless, but a real person, standing tall, eyes forward, with hands that had learned to create something good from the rubble of a stolen childhood. At that moment, I was the operations manager of Sonny's East, the one who ran the show, created the menus, and put out the fires in the kitchen, both literally and figuratively, the person Geraldine trusted with half of her restaurant's heart. It all started one September afternoon when Geraldine had just scolded the head chef for cutting the chicken wrong, then turned to me and said, "Sonny's East needs a manager. I can't keep up. Are you ready to be the boss, Salvador?" I remember standing there, frozen, still holding the inventory list. That question shattered the still surface of my world. Ready? When did someone start asking me if I was good enough to lead, instead of, "Are you too dumb?" like Banks always said? I nodded, not because I wasn't scared, but because for the first time in my life, I didn't let fear decide for me. I started over. Again. Sunny's East was located in a quieter part of town. Fewer tourists, mostly locals, construction workers, medical interns, stay-at-home moms, and laborers like I used to be. I decided to take a different approach with the menu. Simple dishes, but real, warm, and comforting. French onion soup with a quick hack. A crispy, soft-centered grilled ham sandwich. Apple pie, just like Geraldine taught me. But I added a few slices of lemon zest to bring out the flavor. Every morning I arrived before 6 a.m., cleaning the windows and checking the ingredient trays. I never thought I would love a place as much as I love Sunny's, and I never thought I'd love anyone as much as I love Kendra. She was the woman who brought coffee and dreams to the restaurant. Kendra walked into Sunny's at exactly 8:02 a.m. on a Tuesday, carrying a thick book and a sleepy look on her face. Denver omelet, no tomatoes. Black coffee with a splash of hot water. I remember every detail like I carved it into my heart the moment we first met. For 4 months, she didn't say more than 3 words. But one rainy March morning, she looked up while I was cleaning the table, and she laughed. "You misspelled your name. Salvador? Seriously?" No, it wasn't true. But I liked how she noticed. And so we started our little secret joke every week, every Tuesday morning. I became Salvadad, Salvadont, Salvadorito, and she was always just Kendra, the med student who laughed a lot, slept little, and drank coffee like it was water. Our first date happened when she got stood up. Her classmate canceled their plans, and I happened to be near the counter when she got the news. "Do you like pizza?" she asked. I nodded. I'm not sure if it was because of the pizza or because of her smile fading in the sunlight. Later, we moved in together into a 2-bedroom apartment, a small living room, a cozy kitchen, and a bathroom that didn't leak. Every morning, I woke up early for work. Kendra studied through the night, falling asleep at the dining table with medical books thicker than a dictionary. Every weekend, I made breakfast, and she cleaned up. We pieced together a shared life from fragments that no one thought could fit together. Then, one peaceful evening, while watching a movie and folding laundry, Kendra said, "Have you thought about opening a second Sunny's?" I laughed. "I'm still busy surviving with this one." She rested her head on my shoulder and whispered, "But I think you could do it." Just that one sentence made everything inside me start to move. I was no longer a shadow in my old family. I became the one who lit the fire for my own future. Slowly, I forgot about Alan's laughter when he told me I'd never amount to anything. I forgot the cold, dismissive look Banks gave me when he called me useless and a leech. Those things still left scars, but I didn't live in pain anymore. I lived by the things I built for myself. Every regular customer who came back for my French onion soup. Every person who said thank you when I served them a hot meal. Every time Kendra came home with dark circles under her eyes but still smiled when she saw me cooking. That was a small victory for me over them. No need for revenge. No need for arguments. Just living well. I was standing in my kitchen one April evening, the wind still cold but the sky glowing gold with the sunset, when the phone rang. A strange number, the old area code. I almost never answer calls like that. But that night, for some reason, I picked up. "Salvador?" I froze for a moment. No introduction needed. I knew it was my mom. Her voice was rougher, older, but still had that familiar tone, the soft pitch she always used when she was about to lie. "It's your mom, your mom." A long pause. I didn't respond. "Can we talk for a moment? About the family, about your dad, about Alan?" I almost laughed out loud. Family? Dad? Alan? The people who abandoned me like an item left behind at a pit stop, now they wanted to talk? I was about to hang up. But then, for some reason, I said something. "What's going on?" She said, "Your dad. Banks. He's very sick. Heart problems. Struggling to breathe in the hospital. Alan is no better. He lost everything in that investment. You need to come back home. We need you. Our family needs you." Those words, "we need you," hit me like a bucket of cold water to the face. All their lives, they only needed me when I was useful to them. Otherwise, I was just a name easily discarded in the desert. I didn't say anything. She continued, I know what happened back then. It was wrong. But no one expected you to just disappear like that. The whole family has always hoped that one day, I cut her off, hoped I'd come back so Dad could yell at me again, or so Alan could mock me for being useless, or so you could just stand there and turn away like the last time at the rest stop. Silence on the other end, a silence thick with unspoken guilt. Finally, my mom whispered, we were wrong, but can you forgive us? What I forgave wasn't because they deserved it. It was because I deserved peace. That night, I told Kendra everything. She sat beside me, holding my hand tightly. No judgment, no advice, just listening. When I finished, I asked, should I see them? Not because they deserve it, but because I want to look them in the eye. One last time. Kendra simply said, if you feel like you need closure, then go. But you're not alone. Me and the kids will be with you. Back to the old ground. But this time, I wasn't going there to apologize. We rented a spacious SUV with Ellie and Marcus in the back, driving through the roads that used to be the hell of my childhood. I saw the city sign and felt no pain in my chest anymore, only a sense of unfamiliarity. The old house had deteriorated, the walls were peeling, and the grass had grown wild. Banks sat in his wheelchair on the porch, looking out when my car pulled up. Alan stood beside him, his stomach bulging, thinning hair, eyes lacking the authority they once had. My mother stood in the doorway, her hands trembling. The three of them were all there, just like the day they left me behind. But now I was no longer the boy trembling at a rest stop. I got out of the car. Ellie grabbed my hand. Marcus sat behind Kendra. My family, my real family, was here. Banks spoke first. Long time no see. I looked at him. No hate, no anger, just an unbridgeable distance between us. 15 years, I said. 15 years without a single message. Now you're seeing me, not because you missed me, but because you need me. Alan chimed in, trying to hold on to his old tone. You think you're so special, living somewhere else? You think you're better than me? I stepped up, looking him straight in the eyes. I don't need to be better than you. I just need to not be you. That silenced all three of them. I didn't let them get near my wife and kids. I didn't stay the night. I left an envelope on the table with some money and a letter. I didn't come back for love. I came back to give myself some closure. I forgive, but I don't forget. I won't come back, and I don't owe anyone anything. Thank you for abandoning me all those years ago, because if you hadn't, I wouldn't know I could live this well. As the car drove away from the old house, I didn't look back. Ellie quietly asked, Daddy, who are they? I looked into my daughter's eyes and smiled. They were once part of an old fairy tale of mine, but I've written a new story now. One late autumn morning, I sat on the porch, the coffee in my hand slowly cooling down as Kendra came out with Marcus still half asleep in her arms, and Ellie was reading a fairy tale to the new puppy. The wind blew through the trees in front of the house, leaves falling here and there like pieces of memory gently drifting away. I suddenly realized something. I haven't been Salvador for a long time. Who was Salvador? He was the son left behind at the rest stop. He was the silent shadow in meals filled with mockery. He was the child who grew up with a name that hurt every time it was called. I kept that name for the first years in Grand Junction, like a scar, reminding, punishing, warning. But now I didn't need it anymore. When I opened my third restaurant, Nova Kitchen, I didn't use the old name anymore. The sign just said Nova, which means a new star just exploded. Because I exploded. I lit my own flame. The day I legally changed my name. At the Mesa County Courthouse in Colorado, I held the name change petition, no longer trembling like I used to. I filled out a new name, the one I chose for myself. Noah Reyes. Noah, because I liked the sound of it. Software. Easy to say. And it was the first name Kendra accidentally called me on our third date. Reyes, because that was my grandmother's maiden name, the only person in my old family who ever looked at me with love. When the judge banged the gavel, I didn't cry. But inside, it felt like I had just put down a heavy weight that had been with me for 15 years. Salvador had lived enough. Now it was time for Noah to begin. I wrote a letter by hand, not for anyone else, but for myself. To Salvador, you've been so strong. I know you were lonely, and I know you once wanted to go back, to be accepted, but you survived. You loved. You were loved. And that's more important than anything. Now you can rest. I will continue, not to forget you, but to live in a way that honors everything you went through. I burned that letter in the backyard, next to the garden Kendra planted. Marcus ran around and Ellie laughed brightly as the late-season tomato plant still had one last fruit on it. A very normal day. An extraordinary happiness. No applause, no spotlight. But that evening, when I sat with Kendra reading stories to the kids and then lying next to her in the quiet comfort of the kind of silence happy couples share, I knew I had won. Not by defeating them, but by defeating myself. And that's the journey of someone who was once abandoned, but who rewrote their own destiny. No need for revenge. No need to fight back. Just live better, day by day, moment by moment, and that's enough to leave the past behind. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge is peace. If this story touched your heart, hit like, share to spread this message to those who have been hurt. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to hear more emotional stories. We'll meet again in the next memories. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.